Dragonflight pre-patch. It is on the public test realm.
Which means you can go and test out all of the definitely 100%, 1000% final talent trees for your class spec. They won't change again before the actual pre-patch launches in hypothetically about 7 weeks now, based on what we sort of assume and understand from leaks and stuff like that. So yeah, you can more or less go and test them. And I wouldn't do it if you were I wouldn't do it if you're a Boomkin just yet, because there are big changes that we'll talk about later coming soon. But if you're basically any other spec, I would very much recommend if you don't have beta, because it's, well, depends on the kind of player you are, right? If you're the kind of player who just goes, I don't give a shit about thinking about this, I'll just pick the build from Wohead or ICVNs or Discord and call it a day, whatever, that's fine. There's no real need because there's no content. You just be kind of fiddling about and looking at the UI. But if you want to like set up a UI a little bit, or you want to like see what your talents look like, if you want to play around with class trees and utility, it's worth a try. And there's something about something that's interesting that's different to, because obviously you can look at the talent calculator with on Wohead and be like, well, what's the difference? It definitely feels way different when you're in there with your character, because you can copy over and you're testing around, you've got your gear, like it's pretty interesting. So I would highly recommend giving it a shout. Not that you'll find anyone doing content, most likely. It'll just be the training dummy in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, because that's where everyone spends their entire time on beta and alpha and PTR. But yeah.
Yeah, so good stuff.
Sure is.
Yeah, good stuff. You can probably have some fun with that.
I mean, that's basically
things
like
will change, but I recommend checking it out.
Yeah, that's the awkward thing. I don't have the whole biggest amount of time, and it's hard to like commit time to it. But like the majority of my alpha and beta testing has just been log in character, make talent builds.
Yeah,
log in different character,
week, right?
making talent builds. Log in different character, making talent builds. So thankfully there are people like, Mr. GM and Liz flying around finding stuff. Because I'm just sat there looking like, my class gameplay. Can I get this? Can I get this? And it's, wow. Mostly good, I think.
We're getting more good news than not these days.
Definitely. Unless
you like Binding Shot.
Yeah, I think unless you're Enhancement Shaman. So I still think they broke the great build. I still think, I haven't checked it in a couple weeks, but I think the build that was great and then they broke it. Or sorry, the tree that was great and then they broke it still exists. But I'll have to look into that a little bit just to be sure.
One of the things about the talent system is, as much as it's all well and good, for a lot of people,
this is so good. This is brilliant.
Yeah, they could find things a bit daunting. Well, the good news is the Blizzard is going to be implementing some starter builds, right? Essentially some guided templates, right? So this will guide players through talent choices in the trees to help familiarize themselves with things. So the way that it works, and this is what's neat, it doesn't just preload a full tree, like a starter tree, right? Yeah. And what it actually does is it guides you, it goes through each talent choice as you move down. Then, so you do one, the next suggested choice, that'll then be highlighted, and and so on. And okay, if you click on something that is not the talent in the build, it will say, if you take this talent, you'll be out of the guided experience. But just for like new players, casual players, I think this is great. It's definitely a way of like preserving the good points of a system like this for maybe the players like us, while still keeping it like a kind of accessible thing.
Yeah.
So it seems good.
Yeah, it's the other thing where it like goes, well, the tradition, right? And I mean, this is something, because I talked about this recently, and I was talking about, they need something like this because like it works really well on Lost Ark, and like you have this problem where people get overwhelmed and they go to external resources and then they don't think for themselves because they find a build.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like, hey, this is how this works. Here's like the philosophy of why you'd pick these choices, like presented to you and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, well, this is going to have players think about the talent tree, theoretically, of course, and it implies that we'll do this for all the specs, whereas the minute it's only Evoker. But it's like, yeah, no, this is absolutely, you can just go and actually experience it yourself instead of going, I'm afraid, Wohead.com, which I think is going to be the majority of things, and that'll still happen. But it's like, for every couple players that goes, this talent tree is actually very interesting as a result of this, and that's a big win. And I have a whole lot of thoughts about how utterly scuffed the new player experience is in MMOs in general, because it's really, really bad. Really bad. But at least they're paying attention. And I was thinking, this seems like a nice to have for Blizzard. This is a nice to
Yeah.
have, not a must have. And if they're doing nice to have, then that means they must be either crunching their poor little asses off or at least on a decent schedule for them not to be going, whoever making this actually shitting themselves trying to get core content to work. So that's good. They have their priorities right. Basically.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.